Okay.
It would be.
I'm going to keep them here. I'm going to keep them here. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are returning to, the meeting will be resuming. We are returning to TE 29.20. Actually, we're not going to do quick items because I'm scared that you guys are all leaving. So you just hang on tight. This meeting was going to go very quickly. There aren't too many items left on the table, but I want to make sure that we retain quorum. The item before us is TE 29.20, resuming speakers, 462 Eastern Avenue, official plan amendment and zoning amendment application, request for directions report. We have Michael Melling. Thank you very much, Michael. Great to see you.
Speaker, sorry, point of order. Some of us would have wanted to go to June Rowland's funeral and it's exactly at 2 o'clock. I'm wondering, at the suggestion of someone, and I think it's a good idea, but you know, I'm just putting it out there, that at 2 o'clock we observe a moment of stand and observe a moment of silence in recognition of, she was the mayor of this community council, so to speak, at 2 o'clock, and 2 o'clock is her funeral time.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We will certainly do that at 2 p.m. Michael, you were joined by others.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is indeed Michael Melling, and I'm a lawyer at Davies Howe, LLP. I act for Greywood Development Limited, who is the applicant for redevelopment and adaptive reuse of the old Brown's Bread, sometimes better known as the Weston Bakery site. With me and to my left is Michael Bissett. Michael is a planner at Bousfields, and to my right is Dr. Sharon Vate, who is my client's architectural historian, a member of the Canadian Association of Heritage Professionals and Goldsmith Borgel Architects. I'm here primarily to offer you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have of me, of Dr. Vate or of Mr. Bissett, but first I will say the following. Over the last several months, my client and its experts have worked intensively with city planning, transportation, and heritage staff, with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, and with the province to resolve concerns about this proposal centered around really 4 things. First is the conversion of the property to mixed use, which was of course supported by the city. Secondly was floodplain planning, a provincial and TRCA concern. Thirdly was urban design, squarely within your bailiwick. And fourthly was heritage conservation, also squarely within the city's bailiwick. And last fall, the issues with the province and the Conservation Authority were resolved. And my client then focused on working with your staff, with local residents, and with Councillor Fletcher. There was an intensive iterative dialogue that took place over several months, and the result is that you now have before you staff reports from planning and from heritage preservation, which unequivocally recommend support for the revised development proposal, which is currently before the Ontario Municipal Board. Your professional staff are telling you that this proposal meets all of the required statutory and policy tests, that it will be good planning, and that it employs an appropriate approach to heritage conservation and adaptive reuse of the bakery buildings. I want to take a brief moment to respond with 5 points to the members of the public who spoke to you before lunch. And let me start with height and massing. The conversation about the adaptive reuse of this building as to height and massing starts with this. The zoning permitted height is 18 meters. We're seeking 27. The setbacks to the west, to the south, and to the east, as of right in the zoning, are 0. And the setback to the north is 3 meters. That's where the conversation about height and massing began. With respect to traffic, I want to direct your attention not to the BA report, which Councillor Fletcher has drawn to your attention in a series of questions. I'm not asking you to believe the BA report, although there's every good reason that you should and no reason that you shouldn't. I'm going to ask you to believe your own staff, who examined the BA report and concluded that the impact on traffic would be, and this is their exact word, minimal. Those are the facts about traffic with respect to the site. With respect to laneway safety, I suspect the residents have not had an opportunity to very carefully review your staff report because, again, at page 17 of the staff report, in direct response to concerns about laneway safety, my client has agreed to install and pay for speed humps in that laneway, and also has agreed as part of the site planning process to signage to direct cars where they are and are not supposed to go. I want to talk about parking. My client has satisfied your peer review professional staff with respect to the amount of parking that is provided. And finally, I wanted to say this. It was suggested by some of the members of the community that there has been a dialogue, and there has indeed, but I'm going to be completely candid with you and tell you that it hasn't included me. And that has not worked. My clients don't negotiate resolutions of their cases without my advice. In the almost 5 months since I was introduced to the lawyer for the residents, at which I told him I would invite a dialogue between us to try and resolve the residents' concerns, I have never been contacted once. I was invited to a meeting with the residents, and then I was de-invited from that meeting. I stand ready today to meet with the residents to further discuss their concerns and to try and resolve them. But I need everyone to understand there is no resolution of this case that doesn't involve me giving advice to my client. And subject to any questions that you may have, that is all that I had intended to say.
Thank you very much for your comments. Michael and Dr. Patang, do you have further remarks?
We're just here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Members with questions for the speakers? Councillor Fletcher?
Yes. Let's just, the site plan isn't in front of us right now.
That's correct.
It's not here.
That's correct.
Still site plan.
That's correct.
And this was, your client bought this from Weston Bakeries, but the Weston family who bought this site.
That's my understanding.
And do you know, can I ask, do you have any idea what the purchase price was?
I don't.
Does anyone here have an idea? You don't know what was paid for that? Okay. And the issue of, it's very complicated, you would agree with me, that having bought it, you bought it with a lot of complications on the site because it was in the floodplain, has been identified by the TRCA, and what we're basically spending $1.25 billion to mitigate the flooding for this section. It is a conversion, and then there is the heritage, which I moved, which you've agreed to. And then there are the heightened density issues that you've heard from the clients, from your neighbors. While you haven't met directly, I guess I'll just ask you, Mr. Melling, while you haven't met directly, you must have heard from your clients the concern of the neighbors for what will be these looming buildings against these very small, old-style housing that were surrounding this former industrial site, probably all built around the same time, the bakery and the houses.
I have heard that said.
You have heard that. And has there been any movement really substantial around the height on this Booth Avenue or Logan Avenue?
The answer is that there has been, and Mr. Bissett can speak more specifically to that.
What would you say that was?
As stated in the staff report, there's been a request to pull the building back further, and we're
Sorry,
going to be.
Can't hear you. You don't have your mic on.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
There was a request, as noted in the staff report, to move the building back further along Booth. At a height of 18 meters, we'll be meeting a 45-degree angular plane, results in a 3-meter step back at the 9th floor and a 1-meter step back at the 8th floor, as I understand that. And from the beginning, as a planner, that always has been an issue in terms of how the building presents itself along Logan and Booth at the back. That's why since the beginning we've set the building back at grade. While the normal mid-rise building would have like a 0 setback on the sides, we've actually set the building back to be in line with the setbacks along with the houses to the north. And then from there, a building steps back again periodically at the 4th floor, and again at the 6th floor, and again at the 8th and 9th. And again, as one might have to appreciate, this building does step back towards the north as well. So along Booth itself and along Logan, you do have a step back from the north toward the south. So it does reduce the massing in that sense. And we're also dealing with a situation where, as was noted, it's an as-of-right built form height of 18 meters in this area on this site, and as well as the existing building, which is already 21 meters. It sort of sets a context for the property.
Thank you. And the mid-rise guidelines actually would not give you 27 meters. So is there some reason why you haven't followed the mid-rise guidelines?
As I said, the existing height is 21 meters. So starting with the existing height at 21 meters, taking an angular plane above that was the idea, and to fit within that, and that resulted in the 9 stories. And again, as you know, Eastern Avenue itself will be widened to 23 meters in the future.
When is
that? As I understand from reports, it's looked at being widened to 23 meters.
When?
I'm not sure when that's going to occur. It's been in studies.
You're taking planning staff advice?
Well, I'm just noting for information for council, different items that have been evaluated as we've gone
Currently,
through
what
it.
is the width?
20 meters is
20 meters,
is the
correct.
width currently,
Of Eastern
correct.
Avenue.
And the existing building already exceeds that at 21. And so in order to maintain what the intent of the guideline is to reduce the massing above that height of the street wall. That's been sort of setting the stage for that height.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, would you be adverse to having, I know you've said to your lawyer here, that you've had the traffic planning staff look at it. Would you be adverse if I asked the general manager of transportation planning to review your study?
Of course not.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other questions for the speakers? Okay, seeing none. Are there any other members of the public who are here to speak to this matter? No? Okay, so we can actually open up the floor for questions of staff. Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, and the first question is, when will Eastern Avenue be widened?
Through you, Madam Chair, as far as I'm aware, there is no widening of Eastern Avenue planned.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
I said there is no widening of Eastern Avenue planned as far as I'm aware.
You're not aware of that? It's not in any capital plan for the next 10 to 15 years?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Not that you're aware of. I see. That came as a surprise to me this morning as well. I guess I'm just going to ask planning that this site now is, we'll call it kitty corner to the Unilever site. That isn't at this committee, but it is a 60-acre site that's being master planned. Am I right?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. There's a planning exercise underway for the Unilever precinct.
And how many jobs are there supposed to be on that site? There's a 50-story building, up to 50 stories. There's quite a few buildings that are proposed.
The proposal by the applicant there is for office space to accommodate up to 50,000 employees.
So 50,000 people would be going there every day. That's the plan. And there's a 721 is not either in front of this committee. It's at Planning and Growth because they're employment related. And that is to how many, there's a traffic study underway there, isn't there?
Yes, that's another application that's in process, and there is a traffic study associated with that proposal as well.
And the approval of the city, I think we have a problem. I'm just identifying here that we might need to fix because the south side of Eastern Avenue is clearly within the core employment district, one of the only 2 districts that exist still in the old city of Toronto, correct? One in Councillor Perks's ward and one in mine.
That is correct.
And so the north side of Eastern, you're looking at being able to convert for residential. That's my understanding.
In the most recent municipal comprehensive review, there was a proposal for conversion on the north side of Eastern, namely at the site, and the decision there was to recommend it for conversion.
So, but because we have conversion available, they're using the 0 setback for all of these sites. Does that not pose a problem that we can't actually, is there some way we can fix that? Would you suggest we need a planning study for Eastern Avenue, or that we just put an H everywhere so till we get that sorted out? Because we heard the applicants say they have the right to build right to the edge. 27 meters up is what they're looking for, and across the street there's these little homes, people that we met, that are basically 12 to 14 meters.
I would have a more nuanced discussion on that topic, I think, than was put forward in the deputation, which is that the heights and setbacks associated on those sites are associated with industrial permissions.
That's correct. So I'm asking you about the industrial permissions. Should we not, and what would we have to do in order to maintain the city's goal of allowing conversion on the north side, but being able to take away the industrial permissions for all of those sites? What would the steps I would need to take? What are the steps?
To proactively convert
Correct.
industrial
That's correct.
sites on the north
Correct.
side.
Yes?
That would need to be done through a municipal comprehensive review.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fletcher. We can actually come back and continue asking the questions. I want to just acknowledge that it is 2 o'clock. If I can ask all members of council to rise and to take a moment of silence for former Toronto Mayor June Rowlands, who had passed away earlier this past year. She was 93 years old in her passing. She, of course, served as the 60th mayor of Toronto, the very first woman to hold that particular office, and she was missed. Thank you very much. I don't know if members...
One question more.
Sure, I was going to just suggest, I don't know if members would like to offer their own remarks and reflections at this particular point. I'm sure it would not be a problem to deviate from the business before us. Okay, Councillor Matlow, please go ahead.
I just want to contribute that we just did a community consultation and a renewal of the playground in the park, which used to be called Davisville Park and today is known as June Rowlands Park in the heart of Midtown Toronto. And I'm going to be holding a subsequent meeting in February with the community to talk about some other additions that we'd like to make to it. And I think it would be very appropriate to discuss as a community perhaps some other ways we can commemorate and celebrate the life of June Rowlands and the career of June Rowlands, so that we can perhaps provide another opportunity for her family to move from the appropriate mourning period to perhaps another celebration of her life too. So we're going to have a conversation about that in Midtown.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Fletcher.
I will just follow up on your remarks, Madam Chair, and say that in the hallway, pretty close to here, there's a picture of all of the mayors of Toronto, and they start with a man, and there are so many, and then you finally hit June Rowlands, and then you also have Barbara Hall following her. And so how really important that her victory was, that she broke through the glass ceiling in politics, and she was a very capable, highly capable woman in the office of mayor, who had a great deal of respect across the city, and she did a very, very good job. So she was accomplished on many different boards. She handled many important files, and I just think we need to really notice, particularly in these days, the importance of women's leadership, and that she rose to that position and ran a very tight ship, as I understand it. So good for her, good for all of the Torontonians for having elected the first woman mayor, and may she rest in peace.
Thank you very much, councillors. We will be able to resume our business. Councillor Fletcher, I don't know if you want to, if you have any other questions. I didn't want to cut you off. Did you have more questions? Okay, so why don't I just give you 2 more minutes and you can finalize your questions.
I just have a question that one of the residents mentioned, this is to planning staff, mentioned a tree that was need some kind of approval. Is that the case, that there's a tree at that site?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, there is one tree that would require removal.
And what's the process for removing that tree?
They would have to go through an application to remove that tree, which has not yet been submitted.
Can the OMB approve a tree removal?
No.
So really, there's a tree there, and the application would have to be heard here and then go to council. Has that ever been discussed with you? The situation, I forgot to ask the applicant that, sorry, you're hearing about this now. Has that conversation ever been held with you about saving the tree, or what that implication is of having a tree kind of in the way of this project that we're asking to approve today?
Sorry, no, that conversation has not happened.
Never with anyone?
No.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much.
We are still at the point of the meeting where we are asking questions of staff. Any other members of council with questions for our staff today? Okay, members to speak. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I have two motions, Chair. Or both, either. One is to actually refer the traffic study consideration of the item be deferred till February 21st. The traffic study be forwarded to the Acting Director of Transportation Services for a review. And then the second one is basically that's for the heritage item to be deferred along as its companion. Now, this is as I think you heard me ask the question about the Unilever site, which is across the street, which has a smart track station, a downtown relief station, 50,000 jobs, the Gardner takedown. Everything is happening in that little area. And as well, Eastern Avenue this committee having approved the Smart Center redevelopment, and shortly the Planning and Growth and Council will be asked to approve the General Motors application, which is at the old film studio, 721 Eastern. So all of Eastern Avenue on the south side is an active employment area. To me, that needs to be taken into consideration around the transportation study. And good news is that we do have something that we're looking at, as does the applicant for 721. I need to make sure that the answer really is negligible impact after what the community has raised here today about their neighborhood. And the fact that in this particular area, with many acres of employment, I wouldn't know how many acres, it extends right over into Councillor McMahon's area, all the way over to Coxwell, that's dedicated for employment, that rolling in a higher bird's eye view of these applications is pretty important. I also just want to stress the complications here. It was purchased when the bakery closed, and it moved actually into another part of Toronto, but that was basically Loblaws put in an application that looks a lot like this one, not physically, but just as far as its height and density and massing is concerned. But flooding was an issue. That has now been sorted out. The conversion, they're all at the OMB at the same time, and everything went to the OMB. So this community that you're hearing here today has never actually had a chance to speak about this application to Community Council outside of it having been sent right away to the OMB. A multi-layered, very, very complicated application. And while I'm very happy that the heritage is being recognized, because we have a number of industrial heritage buildings in the East End, being the old industrial pocket of Toronto from downtown. We also have issues with the built form. Specifically, it's very high for those folks that are living on both sides. And there are some issues about the lane and getting on and off the site that I think that need to be reviewed. I was a little surprised to hear nobody's ever mentioned the tree when you're bringing in a big application, and there is this gorgeous tree that is part of the migratory route for a lot of birds off the spit, and one of the few in the neighborhood with the nests, that's a very big ask. So to be assuming that you're removing a tree without having looked at that just is a bit of a surprise to me, given the community council here and how we feel about trees. So that is kind of the straw that's broken the camel's back at this point as to what we're going to do about the tree, what we're going to do about the traffic, what we're going to do about the height. And I fully understand Mr. Melling saying that he's going to be involved, and that's very good news because we have a month to discuss this and what other types of changes might be available. I also just want to comment that while I have supported conversions, and there's many more conversions that will be brought forward for the north side of Eastern in my ward, Mary Margaret's ward, that the notion that you can just build to the lot line and if you're, and 27, however many meters straight up, and if you don't do that, aren't you nice? That is a planning problem. Perhaps we shouldn't allow any more conversions there until we get this sorted out, because it's not an actual built form. What you're introducing along Eastern is a built form that's very irregular for all of the other houses that are there. Unlike Carlaw and Dundas, where it's all industrial buildings, where they're building right to the lot line. This is something we need to review here on Eastern Avenue, because you have former industrial, residential, former industrial, residential, and to simply have the right to build right up exactly to the lot line with no setbacks is, I think, a planning problem that has been introduced to us today and that we have to solve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are any questions of the mover? I just have one question, Councillor. I just want to clarify. The motion that was just on the screen asking that the applicant's traffic study be submitted to Transportation Service.
No, the general manager. My motion.
So the traffic study should be forwarded to the General Manager of Transportation Services. Okay. That makes a little bit more sense, but I just wanted to verify. Was there no traffic study submitted with the application?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And it was reviewed, but I think given the school and a number of issues, the fact on the Unilever application, the red door, that how we looked at this in a macro way, and that's why my motion. I'm sorry if my writing was so messy you didn't get that down. That it's to the general manager, and thank you for catching that, Councillor.
Okay, thank you very much. That was my question, and thank you for answering it. Any other questions for the mover? No? Okay, so we have before us the deferral motions. We can vote on them together, I think. And we will be discussing this matter again in February. All those in favor? Any opposed? Yes. Thank you. That has been adopted. Thank you very much. We are going to be moving to TE 29.21. Okay, if we do quick items, you all have to stay in your chair. Okay, so I'm going to acknowledge Councillor McMahon because I know she's been waiting, and then I'm going to come to Councillor Fragedakis. Quick items.
Thank you very much. So I have TE 29.55 and .56, both construction staging items with an amendment, please.
Okay. Is there just simply the staff report?
No, I have an amendment.
Oh, I see,
that was
okay.
sent in this morning.
Thank you.
Well, no, there's a longer one. Okay, there, perfect. So those two for 55 and 56.
One at a time. Yeah.
So, okay, so you want to do 55 first?
Sure, let's, all those in favor for the motion that's on the screen, amending 55, which is construction and staging 1327 Queen Street East. Any opposed? That carries.
Got a second motion.
And the,
55?
yeah,
Two,
yes,
two on each.
yes. Item as amended, all those in favor?
No,
Any?
sorry, Councillor. She has two motions on each item.
Oh, I see. Do you want to table your second motion on the same item?
Yep, yep.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Take them as a package.
Okay.
Good, I don't know.
So just because we had just done that, if I can get all those in favor for the second motion, any opposed, that carries. Item as amended, .55, any opposed, that carries. Thank you. TE 29.56, construction staging area, 1884 Queen Street East. Please table your motions, Councillor.
All right, they're the same. two motions.
Let's put that on the screen.
And we can do package or not.
Okay, so we'll vote on those two items together. All those in favor of the motions? Any opposed? That carries. Item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. I'm going to recognize Councillor Fragedakis.
Oh, I had one more, if
One
you
more,
want.
sorry, okay. Sorry to.
29.21, residential demolition on Sears.
That's a timed item.
Oh, it's timed? It's time for 11, right?
That item is
11:30.
actually, it's coming right up afterwards, so do you want to just hang on tight?
Okay, sure, thanks.
Yes, that's our very next item. Councillor Fragedakis, go ahead.
It's item 29.59, extension of permit parking hours, Queensdale Avenue, and this matter had been dealt with in November. So staff were I believe, have prepared the motion to withdraw, because it's already been dealt with. It's on the screen.
It's coming. Okay, motion to withdraw the item from the agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Do you have some? Okay. Now, just as a sidebar, no, you all have to stay in your chair, even after you do your quick releases. Councillor Cressy.
I can release item 41, which was the curbside management strategy in Ward 2028 and 27, I believe. And I can also release item 42, which is the same curbside piece.
And you're simply moving the recommendations in the report? Okay, voting on T 29.41, curbside management strategy, parking amendments, delegated locations, wards 20, 27, 28. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Voting on TE 29.42, curbside management strategy, parking amendments, non-delegated locations, ward 20, 27, 28. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much.
I have more.
Okay, go ahead.
I've been informed by clerks that item 47 we need to reconsider. And so motion B, if it can be put up, this is the technical amendment. To item 47.
Okay, item 47 is construction staging area, Murray Street, 600 University Avenue.
Two parts to this. The first is the technical amendment from staff related to Ord Street. There was a word missed, and that's what I'm moving here. It's the first part. Just that.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you.
The second part is the rest of the recommendations I'd moved, in fact, need to come to City Council, I'm told, so that I'm adding item 101 to the agenda to do that. And it's being circulated.
Yeah, so that's a separate item. So if I can just have a vote on the item 47, item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. And then a vote to add the item that Councillor Cressy just introduced. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you.
It's being introduced if we want to vote on it now. Or not. I'm in your hands. Sorry.
Let the chair run the meeting.
Okay. Anyone else with quick items? And this is the last one. Councillor Tracy.
I have three quick releases. 29.48, construction staging area, Frederick Street, 158 Front Street. Move approval of staff recommendations with additional motion.
Okay. And motion on the screen.
Is that the amendment?
That is the amendment and the amended motion. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Councillor, go ahead. Two more.
29.49, construction staging area, 100 Howard Street. Move approval of staff recommendations with additional motion.
Okay. Motion on the screen. Okay. This is our standard motion now. All those in favor? Motion on the screen. Any opposed? That carries. Item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 29.54, I'm guess is your next one.
Yes, construction staging area, 81 Bay Street. Move approval of staff recommendations with additional motion.
Okay. Motion on the
Thank you.
screen. All those in favor of the motion, the amendment? Any opposed? That carries. And item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. So let's head back. We are now heading to TE 29.21 residential demolition application, 130 Sears Street East. We have one registered speaker, Jonathan Benchkowski. Is there a Jonathan Benchkowski? Seeing none, are there any other members of the public here to speak to this item? No, seeing none. Members with questions to staff? No. Members to speak? Councillor McMahon?
Sorry, I have an amendment, I think. Here we go. So, like your support?
Is it simply the three clauses, or do we have to keep scrolling down?
I think it's the three.
Is it three? Okay, great.
Yep.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
TE 29.22, request for a fence exemption, 23 Forest Hill Road. Any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Members with questions to staff? No. Members to speak? Councillor Mahavik. Oh, sorry, Matlow. Sorry.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'm going to be moving the alternate recommendation to approve the exemption.
It's on the screen now. Okay. Okay. All those.
That is the alternate there.
Yeah.
I know. Well, we came up with one.
All those in favor of the motion on the screen to grant the fence exemption? Any opposed? Am I moving too fast?
It's in the report. It's not in the recommendations. Yeah. So that is
If there are questions of the mover, then state them, and then we can have a good discussion. If not, then we're ready to vote, I believe. Councillors? We're ready. Okay. Are there any questions of the mover? Councillor Perks? Okay, that's a sidebar conversation. We're ready to vote then. No brain breaking right now here. Let's just focus. We're almost there. All those in favor of the motion on the screen? Okay, any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 29.23, request for a fence exemption, 36 Berryman Street. I understand that the parties in dispute are now in the second phase of their mediation. I'm going to request that this item be deferred for one meeting cycle. And that is what I will be moving right now. And we all get to reconsider this again in February. All those in favor of the deferral motion? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 29.24, request for a fence exemption, 204 Seton Street. We have a member of the public here to speak. I'd like to invite Jennifer Walker to the table. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome. Okay. Jennifer, if there's a button directly in front of you, when you hit it, the light will go on, your microphone is on, and you've got 5 minutes. Please proceed when you're ready.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Council. My name is Jennifer Walker, and I'm the homeowner of 204 Seton Street, where my husband and I have lived for the past 13 years. We are located between Dundas and Gerrard, backing onto Osconauten Lane. I'm here today to follow up on our request for a fence exemption. As you know from our initial meeting, our fence complies with our pool permit requirements and has been approved by the city inspectors. Our neighbors on either side of us are on board with the height of the fence and have signed letters to say so. There are two items, however, I would like to add today. The first one is that the request for this exemption is not for aesthetics or to ignore our neighbors. We love our neighbors and our neighborhood, however, it does not come without its challenges. As a mother, my job is to protect my family and my home, and this fence allows me to do so. Since we installed the fence, I no longer have to clean up crack pipes, used condoms, or syringes that would continually be chucked over our fence into our yard where my daughter and our neighborhood kids would play. I am no longer woken up in the middle of the night by sounds of strangers jumping over my fence to either steal something or get away from illegal activity that has taken place close by. The second item, since our initial meeting last November, we reached out to 51 Division and extended an invitation to visit and inspect our fence. Our main thought was that we wanted to ensure that in no way would the height of our fence impede on the work that our officers need to follow up on a day-to-day basis or an emergency in this neighborhood. Constable David McAllister came by on Tuesday, November 21st at 2 p.m. In our discussions, Constable McAllister felt our fence heights were within reason given the neighborhood. He felt we had installed adequate lighting in place for nighttime activity. He was also pleased that our fence doorway on the north side of our house into the backyard from the street had a large window to see into the backyard if needed. Since we have not had any unwanted activity in our backyard with the extension of our fences, he felt taking them down would in fact open us back up to illegal activity. In closing, I would just like to say that we love our neighborhood and its diversity. This exemption is not about keeping our friendly neighbors out or making our home more desirable. For us, it is about safety of our family and our home, because if we can't feel safe at home, then where can we? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any questions of the speaker? No? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else from the public who is here to speak to this matter? Seeing none, members to ask questions of staff? Members to speak. Councillor Troisi?
I did go out to 204 Seton and investigated this myself. I was happy to hear that the police were supporting the homeowner as well. So I'm going to move to approve the fence exemption.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Any other members with comments and remarks? Seeing none, I'd just like to thank the deputy for coming out and the Councillor Troisi for doing a site visit. This is the area that we all affectionately know as the downtown east, and as you have heard, there's been lots of conversation in the public around the opiate crisis, the crisis that we're trying to manage around homelessness and vulnerable people. The remarks shared to us today by the homeowner is probably something that you don't necessarily hear about in every single community, but in our neighborhood in the downtown east, it is extremely difficult and challenging when the norm of the neighborhood are fences that are well in excess of any bylaw. And as a neighborhood that has erected fences 6 feet tall, 7 feet tall. In some cases, I've seen 8 feet tall. In some cases, we've seen barbed wire, a lot of surveillance equipment. This is all not a healthy condition in the long run. In the short term, while communities are trying to keep each other safe and watch out for one another, it has become the norm. What I'd like to see one day is those fences start to come back down to a more human scale friendly environment, and that is something I think that we can all aspire to moving forward. So this is a normal, unfortunately, it's a normal condition in our neighborhood. Councillor Troisi knows this lesson too well, and so I would like to just provide some comments to why we do allow for some height exemptions in that neighborhood is largely because right now, until we can get ahead of what is happening in our neighborhood, we've got to keep people safe. Which is why we have police officers coming to look at a fence, which is why we have councillors coming on site to look at a fence, and hopefully, you know, in a very short period of time into the near future, we will be taking down those fences in our community. Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the screen? Any opposed? That carries. Oh, sorry, there's a. Okay, we have one opposed. Still carries. Heading into the next item, TE 29.26, front yard parking appeal, 14 Petman Avenue. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I just jumped over one. TE 29.25, application to remove a private tree, 16 Cornish Road. Jean Fraser. Hello, Jean, welcome. You have 5 minutes, and the clock is on your left-hand side.
Good afternoon, members of council. The application, what I'm looking for is to have the tree removed, not just strictly for aesthetic purposes, but more of safety reasons. We moved in there approximately 3.5 years ago and had no clue what a black walnut tree can do. We love it. It's beautiful, but it has caused so much damage to the lawn, to the existing trees and shrubbery. I have 2 neighbors on the right of me who fully support this removal. They've both lived there for over 25 years and wanted to both be here with me, 2 very vocal women who would love to have been here, but they're away. They have said as well that over 25 years plus that they've been there, it's destroyed many of their trees, and they have to consult with people to figure out which kind of planting they can do. Not only that, I have children who they don't go into the backyard as much as we'd like to see them. We have a trampoline, but it's completely full of black walnuts, and the squirrels come and they chew them up, and it's like walking on glass into the backyard. I do have photos, and the squirrels take the nuts not only all over the lawn, but they take them to the front property and has ruined the driveway of the neighbors. They're completely stained with all the secretion from the tree. And this secretion that comes from the black walnut tree is what's destroying and killing. So it's not just a potential hazard, it's actually happening. We did have a sign put up on the lawn, and nobody, to my knowledge, had opposed the removal of the tree. So I know I've only spoken for 2 minutes, but that is pretty much, as I said, my main appeal here is about the safety, not the aesthetics at all. It's just, we would like our kids to play more in the backyard. They're 12 and 14. We'd like them to have people over and hang out at our place, but it's just, it's not a very welcoming backyard, given every summer and into October and November. It's just a complete, the walnuts own the backyard, and the squirrels.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any questions of the speaker? No? Okay, thank you. Any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none, questions of staff? Okay. I have just 2 maybe very quick questions of staff. The tree in question is 51 centimeters in diameter. I understand from the report that it is a healthy tree. Also, there's a reference in here that private trees the private tree bylaw does not contain a mechanism that would allow the removal of this subject matter tree based on the concerns outlined by the applicant. Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
So the concerns around the tree potentially harming other trees or harming the landscape, or perhaps creating an unwelcoming condition for children, but a very welcoming condition for squirrels, that does not apply as a legitimate concern in the private tree bylaw. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so with respect to that, the recommendation here to deny the removal of the tree is largely based on the fact that the concerns listed are not addressed in the tree bylaw. Is that correct?
No, yeah, that's correct. There is no condition in the bylaw that would give us the authority to allow the removal of a black walnut tree for those reasons.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe Councillor Perks has questions. Okay, Councillor Fragedakis.
Thanks, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, does the black walnut tree, is that one of the trees that is, we plant trees under the tree bylaw that are like good for the tree canopy? Is this one of those trees?
Yeah, black walnuts are large, significant shade-producing trees.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, members to speak. Councillor Perks.
Just very quickly, I wanted to thank city staff for the thoroughness of their report here. They've gone through, for example, showing that city staff have contacted the city's risk management unit and looked through all the historical records, and that we have never received a claim for damage or personal injury related to walnuts. So, you know, that's a great deal of work that they've done. They've also indicated where members of the public can go to find plants that can be companion planted with black walnuts. It's a very common thing for tree species to have a variety of strategies for eliminating certain kinds of competitors. So, you know, they've done a lot of thorough work here, and once again, I'm tremendously impressed with the dedication and detail of our urban forestry staff in dealing with applications like this.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Anyone else to speak? No? I'd like to move the recommendation in the staff report, and also just to highlight that, that this is also a report that goes a bit further than what most reports do with respect to risk management. But it also contains comments from staff that the arborist report provided by the applicant did not provide any comments on the condition of the trees, but rather just highlighted the concerns of the applicant, which of course was reinforced by the comments from staff, is that it doesn't really speak to the grounds, the legitimate grounds of private tree removal. So with that, I don't think we have I think we're in the best position to follow the advice of staff and to retain the tree on site. Any other ones? Anyone else to speak? Okay, Councillor McMahon.
Well, yeah, and I would just echo everyone's comments and the accolades for our amazing forestry staff, and remind people that we are working, you know, to double our tree canopy, and that we don't take down trees lightly, and especially when they are in good health, and they're adding. Improving our air quality across the city, reducing our greenhouse gases, and all kinds of the endless benefits that trees provide for our city. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay. If there are no more speakers, all those in favor of the recommendations on the report is before us. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time to share with us your feedback. T29.26, front yard parking appeal, 14 Petman Avenue. We have a speaker, Wendy Hymas. Welcome both.
My name is Wendy Hymas, and I live at 14 Petman Avenue. I've brought my mother, Glenda, in support of my appeal of a front yard parking pad at my house. I have gone through this process once before, so I'm hoping that I will be successful in my appeal. I'm asking for approval of a front yard parking pad as opposed to parking on the street. The street, although it does have permit parking, there are several problems involved with that. There are several residents who live on a neighboring street who will often come and park overnight on Petman Avenue, taking up the spots that are available for the actual residents who live on Petman Avenue. And as a result, it's very difficult for me to actually find a spot on the street to park where I live. The other problem with parking in that neighborhood is that there are a lot of commuters who come down to Toronto to work from other areas of the GTA who park on the street and actually throughout that neighborhood and are there for the day and do not come and actually retrieve their car until quite late at night. So when I get home from work, there is physically no space for me to actually park my car on the street, leaving me without anywhere to go. I also have chronic foot issues, which I do have some documentation that will support that. That often leaves me walking in pain. So being able to park on my, or having a front yard parking pad will go a long way in helping to alleviate the chronic foot issues that I do experience. So I do have documentation from a chiropractor that has been treating my chronic foot issues for 10 years now that I'm happy to share with you. I have copies of that, as well as having copies or pictures just showing how difficult it is during the day or actually coming home from work. I'm a teacher, so I am gone early in the morning and don't get home until about 5 at night, and there's nowhere to park. So I have pictures that actually support there being no physical space on the street for me to actually park on a street. And I'm often left having to juggle a car around if I find a spot anywhere in the neighborhood, which is next to impossible. So I'd certainly appreciate any consideration of approving a front yard parking pad to allow it easier for me to actually find parking on my street at my house.
Can you read that, and then I want to speak?
I don't know if you want me to read the letter from my chiropractor about chronic foot issues.
It's not necessary if you've already tabled it. We will have it before us. Have you concluded your remarks?
Yes, thank you.
And would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Glenda Hymas. I'm Wendy's mom, and I guess you never stop worrying about your children. Petman, as you know, is a little street that joins Eglinton to Sudan, running north and south. There are 2 pubs, 2 daycares, and 2 apartment buildings at the north and south end of Petman. I've covered both ends. The pubs and the daycare seem to be the real problem because at that time when Wendy comes home from school, anytime between 5 and 6, she arrives home. There isn't a space to be had with mums and dads picking up children from these 2 daycares. And as the weather improves and the construction along Eglinton is finished, it's going to be even more of an issue because the pubs will become more popular in the good weather, and once that LRT across Eglinton is finished and running, then it's going to be major problems on all of those streets, but certainly on Petman. The parking pad, per se, has been there for 15 years. Wendy has been there since what year?
20 years I've been in the house.
20 years, so it's been more than 15 years that the actual interlocking paving stones have been there, but not quite in the shape that the city would like it to be. So all that is required to make it meet the city requirements is a small addition at the end where the interlocking hits the sidewalk. It needs to be a little wider by about 2 feet at that point, which requires only 3 or 4 inches below the level of the bricks to be dug by hand, and then a few more bricks put in to straighten it. Right now it has a rather pleasing curve, but the city would like it rectangular and straight. So it's a very minor job to meet the requirements that the city is asking for. So I'm really here just to support Wendy. I'm concerned about certainly about her ongoing issues with her ankles and her feet, the pain that she is in each day, especially as a teacher. She doesn't have a sit-down job. She's on her feet all day. She's coming home exhausted and in pain. I want her to be able to park, get in the house, and put her feet up, which is what she has to do at the end of every day. I think, is my time up? Or do I have more time? Because I have more
You have more time. Do you have something new to say?
Okay. I'm just wanted to point out that hers is the last house to receive approval. Everyone else on her side of the street, they're all semis, mostly semis all the way up. On the other side of the street, some of their houses are detached with private drives. Wendy's property is only 85 feet deep, as all of them are from the corner of Sudan up to Wendy's. After Wendy's house, it then goes to full depth properties. The older semis built on that street have very narrow mutual drives. There is no way a car would go anywhere near or down those drives, plus you don't have the space. And every house from Sudan up that has applied has got your approval to have front yard parking. So she would be the last one that would be appearing before you to ask for that.
Thank you very much. Any questions of our speakers? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much for your time today. Are there members with questions of staff? No? Seeing none, members to speak? Councillor Matlow and Councillor Perks.
I move the alternate recommendation to support the residents' appeal.
Okay. Councillor Perks?
Noting that this application, staff have recommended not approval because there's parking permitted on the same side of the street, and the paved area would not meet the clearance requirements for the lovely existing tree. I move the staff recommendation to deny.
Okay. Any other speakers? Okay. All those in favor of Councillor Matlow's motion first to approve, please indicate your support. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? Councillor Bailao, do you have an opinion? Oh, sorry. Okay. Councillor McMahon, to support. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That loses. Councillor Perks has moved the recommendations contained in the staff report. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. That has been endorsed. So the recommendations in the staff report are going ahead. Thank you very much for your time. T29.27, front yard parking appeal, 38A Thelma Avenue. We have a speaker, Steve Mack. Hi, Steve. Welcome. And while you get ready, I'm just going to ask that someone move to introduce a new business to the agenda, item 99 and 100. Councillor Layton. Correct? Okay. Great, thank you. That's already been added. Okay. Just turn it around so it faces you. And that's perfect, thank you. When you're ready, I'll start your clock. Yes, you've got 5 minutes. Just make sure the light before you is on, so the microphone is on.
Okay, thank you for councilors for having me. I have a lot to cover, so I'm going to jump right into it. So I'm here for 31A Thelma front parking pad appeal. There are several points that I wanted to mention. The positive poll that we have year-round challenges. I can get into that a little bit later. The proposed plan exceeds all physical requirements of the code and bylaws. Also reduces congestion after the approval. Pedestrian safety and traffic flow. Also, we took that into account and we can address that. Increased city revenue. I'm not going to explain too much, but on-street parking is definitely less expensive to the off-street parking permit. So there would be a positive net impact to the city. Sustainable solution, I can get into that also in a little bit later. So the poll results on record is 86% majority in favor. We took Councillor Matlow's recommendation to work out, some differences with the neighbors, and we've come to an understanding. Now we definitely have more support in that realm, and it's been quite good. Now, I also went canvassing in the neighborhood, 2017 and also 2018. All results were positive. More so, I just received this yesterday. This is actually a letter from my neighbor stating that There are no concerns with pedestrian safety because there are limited traffic on my side of the street. I'll also explain that a little bit further when we get into the diagrams. So the year-round challenges. This is where we actually have trouble parking. Although on-street parking permits are undersubscribed, parking on Thelma is dreadfully a pain throughout the day and a night year-round. These pictures are taken from March and November of 2017. It's fully parked throughout the day. Now, in practice, on-street parking is busy all day and only becomes available after 11:30, perhaps midnight on some days, when local amenities are closed, such as gym classes, banks, businesses, from Forest Hill Village. Now, the snowbanks build up immediately in front of my house, making it a brutal mission to safely drop off my kids and groceries before parking further away. So I have two sons, one's 3 and one's 6. So sometimes my kids would race me to the house when my hands are full, which causes, it's quite dangerous. And they feel, they can outrun the cars. It's also always a scare for us. Sometimes we may need to park in Green P or the next street when the paid options are all full. So this is part of the snowbank issue. Just the other day, January 11th, I dropped off groceries. Took me 1 minute and 40 seconds. My neighbor left me a note on my car saying that, don't partially park on obstructing my driveway. It was literally, she left this after she parked, saying that, she'll tow my car if this happens next time. Apparently, not too many neighbors work on Thelma. So this is also evening, just the other day, January 14th. This is a Sunday night. It's also fully parked. And you can see it just randomly capturing a truck or a courier car speeding down Thelma, just to save time sometimes, without realizing this is a cul-de-sac because there's a lack of signage. It doesn't say there's no exit. So it's always a concern for my family with young children. Some drivers could be rushing to the gym or an appointment to the village, while others rushing to pick up the kids from daycare at the end of Thelma. I'll explain more shortly.
Sorry, Steve, you're actually out of time. There are questions for you, so perhaps you can try to answer, complete your deputation through questions. Councillor Perks.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you for all the work you've put in preparing, obviously. The staff report on page 3 notes that there's currently an on-street parking permit registered to your address. Is that yours?
Yes, correct.
And so the parking pad you're asking for here, that would be for that vehicle, or is it a new vehicle?
No, it would be for my vehicle. The most important...
So I know that you have the things you wanted to communicate to me, but I wanted to get the answer. So is this for a second vehicle, or this is for the...
This is our only single...
Okay, thank you. So it's the one that already has a parking permit.
Correct.
Thank you, I understand now.
Okay, thank you.
So just to be clear, are you going to relinquish that on-street permit parking if you get this?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my points was...
Okay, that's all.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your time. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Any questions for staff? Okay, Councillor Davis, please go ahead.
There are still permits. Only 46% of the permits have been issued. Am I right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Pardon?
Through the chair, that is correct. There are still permits to be issued.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the end of your question? Okay. Anyone else with questions? Okay, seeing none, members to speak. Councillor Mallow.
I'm going to move the alternate recommendation to support the residents' request for the appeal.
Okay. Any other members to speak? Councillor Perks.
So I'm noting that the report indicates that of the 13 spaces on Thelma, only 6 permits have been issued. And in fact, one of them is a property that has two permits for that property, and that there's therefore adequate space available. I'm going to be moving the staff recommendation, which is the Toronto and East York Community Council deny the request for front yard parking at 38A Thelma Avenue.
Okay. We're going to vote on Councillor Matlow's motion first, which is the alternative motions or revised motions. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That loses. Councillor Perks' motion is a staff report. All those in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those opposed? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. That wins. So the staff recommendations to deny are the ones that were adopted by this community council. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Moving along, we are now dealing with TE 29.28, front yard parking appeal, 162 Moore Avenue. Gordon Robinson. Welcome, Gordon. Yes. Okay. If you can just make sure the buttons are pressed in front of you so they're lit, which means your microphone is on. Okay, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon. I'm the resident and co-owner of 162 Moore. My wife, Daryl Favor, is with me as well, and I'll be addressing the issues. We're both retired seniors. We've occupied the house for 27 years. We're looking for a practical and convenient and safe way to park on our property. Currently, it's impractical to park in the driveway and the garage in the back on a daily basis. Transportation Services has reviewed our appeal and has recommended in favor of our application. We understand there's very few recommendations that are positive, so we appreciate their work and that recommendation they've made. And just to outline the conditions that they've reviewed and commented on, there's no on-street parking on our street. Moore Avenue in that block is a minor arterial and it has parking restrictions at rush hour. Our mutual drive is less than the 2.2 meters that the municipal code stipulates as the minimum. And there's only about 8 inches clearance for our car on either side when we do try to park. It's not possible to use side mirrors when you park in that driveway, and you're pretty much blind and need, my wife actually guides me out if I have to park in the garage in the back, so it's not practical for daily parking. Transportation Services has confirmed that we meet the landscape open space requirements. The city poll was 81% of residents responding in favor. And they also commented that 19 residences in our block have licensed front yard parking already. We are one of the few mutual drives that do not have that. And most properties with parking approval have narrow mutual driveways like ours. So again, we're requesting that you approve our appeal, as we really have no practical alternative, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your comments. You do have questions. Councillor Davis.
What are you doing now for parking?
We typically park on the street and take our chances with the parking police, so that's really our only alternative. We've done that for 27 years, and that's, it would be more advantageous for the city to charge us a fee to park on our property than to police the street, which is also inconvenient for neighbors and people who use Moorvale Park across the street. So we'd like to get our car off the street and put it in a place where it's safe and practical.
So is it, there's no parking on the street? during rush hours because it's arterial, but you can park there at other times. So the difficulty is during the rush hours.
There is no permit parking licensed in that area, and there are parking restrictions in the morning. I think it's 7 to 9, and the afternoon 4 to 6, going the other way. So that street is not licensed for permit parking due to its arterial nature and high volume of traffic.
There are many streets with mutual driveways where they work out arrangements with neighbors. Many places where that happens. Is that something you can work out with your neighbors?
Well, typically, mutual drives are not designed for parking. There's a right-of-way on them that, and I'm not sure whether the city permits you to park a car in the mutual driveway, except temporarily. It's quite inconvenient to have to coordinate parking with another resident, so.
I know about that. Many of us do it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. Any other questions of the speakers? No, not yet. Thank you very much for your time. I recognize that we have another member of the public who would like to speak to the matter. So do you want to come forward?
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
I'll be very brief. Thank you very much. My name is Jan Mollenhauer. I'm a resident at 182 Moore Avenue, and I, by full disclosure, do not have a parking pad. I have a mutual drive. I wanted to come to support my neighbors for the simple reason that living on Moore between Mount Pleasant and Welland is an extraordinarily busy arterial, heavily trafficked. With the diversion that's happened with the Eglinton construction. I moved there 5 years ago. I've seen a significant increase in heavy duty equipment, garbage trucks and the like. And my simple appeal to the council is regarding safety. Someone who does park their car on the street because haven't been able to arrange a mutual arrangement with neighbors we are on good terms. I don't take my car to work because I can't figure out the 7 to 9, 4 to 6 thing and have the car off the street at certain times. So I'm adding extra burden, albeit small, and a minor point to traffic. I'd much prefer to take public transportation, but there's nowhere for me to personally put my car. But the bigger issue is that I wanted to convey to the councillors here today that I've personally been victimized by 3 what I will call hit and runs, where my vehicle parked on the street has lost its side view mirror. So that's come at a personal cost to me of well over, let's say, $1,200 for repairs. My daughter has been hit by a car. When I park my car on the street, I am quite trepidatious about opening the car door and worrying about getting out safely, and sometimes I can sit there for 2, 3, 4 minutes, which is no big deal, but then I also wait 2, 3, 4 minutes. Last night was very unpleasant to safely cross the street. So the speed through that area, I know, is a factor that the city is very aware of, the densification and the dangers and the traffic issues on that particular strip. And so I think any cars that you can get off the street so the traffic can flow more smoothly. The only other comment I would offer experience is that the 4 to 6, 7 to 9 thing creates, if you're allowed both times in the weekends, there's a gully that happens and people are honking and people are driving up the middle of the road. There is no proper signage in terms of what demarks the east-west lanes. So you have many more issues over and above whether someone should get a parking pad in this area. I simply believe you should support those who ask for one to remove their cars from the street and to be able to safely get in and out of their vehicles, particularly if they are of a certain age or have children or are disadvantaged in any way. I think it would be grossly irresponsible not to put this forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none? Okay. Did you have questions? You can ask the questions of staff. How's that? Questions of staff? No? Okay. Okay, so Councillor Davis, questions of staff. Go ahead.
This is what I think Councillor, oh my goodness, your predecessor, Kyle Ray, called the faint hope situation. So faint hope clause, they have no permit parking, but they meet all the other requirements, and there is no other option. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Any other members with questions to staff? Seeing none speakers, I'd like to move the recommendations in the staff report. I recognize that you do not, members, see a lot of front yard parking approvals in Ward 27, and largely because, number one, we don't take applications because of the moratorium. But also, more importantly, I think that it is very important to note that this is an exception to the rule, which is why staff have come forward with a favorable report, and to note that the feedback and the claims made by the residents today about the safe driving and walking conditions of Moore Avenue are absolutely true. There has been an inability to find a solution forward from transportation operations, transportation services, on how to make this street safer. It is literally the only east and west connection between two significant pockets of neighborhood, and everything feeds onto this tiny little street called Moore Avenue, which on one side has the park, the Moorvale Park. On the other side, it has a series of homes, and their backyard is the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. And it's not just pedestrian vehicles, that single passenger vehicles that pass along the street. They are major trucks that do not pay attention to the road restrictions and requirements, and there is never enough police enforcement. The claims about side mirrors, coming off of vehicles, I've heard about them for years. I'm sure Councillor Ray has been trying to deal with it, and none of it has been ever come to a resolution. And I have a very small vehicle myself. It's not a very large vehicle, but even my small little vehicle cannot fit on Moore Avenue. You just cannot place it there without thinking that you're going to come back and half your car is gone. So there's just absolutely no way that you can even stop safely there. Although an unideal situation, creating a front yard parking pad, it is simply the only option before that's available to these residents. So hopefully we can have your support on this. All those, anybody else? No? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. T 29.29, front yard parking appeal, 121 Browning Avenue. Are there? What's that?
Madam Speaker, I actually was going to move a deferral at the request of the applicant. They've written to staff saying they can't be here today and wanted to have a deferral of this.
Sure.
I forwarded that to.
There's a request to place a deferral motion. I was just going to call for speakers, but it's okay. She doesn't want.
I wasn't sure if this was we were asked to defer till February. If you could just give me a moment, I'll check with staff.
Okay.
They wrote to staff.
Why don't we hold that down?
Hold it for a moment.
If there are any members of the public who are here to speak to item number 29, 121 Browning Avenue, the local councillor is interested in deferring this matter, so please let us know if you are here to speak to that. Moving right along, T 29.30, refusal of a Boulevard Cafe permit application with deck located at 180 Eglinton Avenue East, Redpath Avenue flankage. We have one speaker here, Tony Walton. Tony Walton. Emily, I see you. You just want to let the clerks know that you want to speak to this item? Tony, welcome. If I can just, if you press the button, the light will go on, your microphone is then on, and you have 5 minutes. Members, if I can ask you to keep members, I need you to keep your voices down. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councillor. I'm representing Scruffy Murphy's Irish Pub, which is at 180 Eglinton Avenue East, which used to be the Golden Griddle restaurant. I was there for many years. We have an existing patio that has been there approximately 20 years. We applied, we did some changes to the patio as the city requested. We applied for a patio license. It went out to poll and it was rejected because the local condominium building, which is half a block down the street, rejected it because they thought that it would generate a lot of noise. Well, in our finding that the corporation, the condo board sent letters around to all the tenants in the building telling them to reject the patio at Scruffy Murphy's Irish Pub because they would regret it because of noise. There is a patio within 20 feet of the patio entrance. There's also a patio across the street at Dimitri's restaurant, which is now closed. What I'm asking for is to consider the rejection of the application that we sent in, and if we could get a patio up for this year, otherwise we have a problem that if we cannot have a patio, we cannot continue business. We've already been put out of business once at 150 Eglinton Avenue East because of the construction, which was a real downturn in sales. So we moved our business to 180, hoping that we would get the patio up and running last summer, which didn't happen. So hopefully it may happen this year if it's agreed on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions of the speaker? Okay. Thank you, sir. Seeing none, we do have another speaker, Emily Daigle. Do you want to come up? Yep. Okay.
I just moved an able-bodied chair.
Okay. I'm going to restart the clock. Go ahead, Emily.
I oppose this application for two reasons. One, that area in question is used by a lot of people with visual impairments. In that area, there's two different organizations that use that area that people with visual impairments go to. And the other thing is that area, people with wheelchairs also use the sidewalks around there because there's a building nearby where there's people with disabilities that live there as well as seniors. And the patios that go there, and I've been around there in the summer, they tend not to be A, wheelchair accessible, and B, their signs are everywhere in the middle of the sidewalk. And those sidewalks are narrow enough with all the construction, and this construction's not planned to end for 4 or 5 more years. And it would be really appreciated, and the bus stops get blocked by signs and A-frames. And the patios, they either need to be wheelchair accessible so they're accessible for everybody, and keep their A-frame signs at a minimum as well, or else not be allowed. Let's not, the sidewalks are for everybody, not just for able-bodied. Patios are for everybody, not just able-bodied. And we're working on, in this city, a sidewalk policy for everybody, not just people that are able-bodied, people with disabilities. I mean, we want to be at these establishments. We want to bring these establishments business. And if they're not wheelchair accessible, even including the patios, then how can we give them our business? And the patios usually don't have very good markings for people with low vision, and that's a huge factor on this stretch of Eglinton. Thank you.
Emily, thank you very much for your deputation. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who are here to speak to this matter? Seeing none, questions of staff? Seeing none, members to speak. Councillor Matlow.
Madam Chair, I move the recommendation to grant the permit. This is a little bit of a background. Scruffy Murphy's was down the street, and Tony moved it to the Redpath location. And it has been, for many years, one of the neighborhood institutions. It's the watering hole for residents, both of the condo that was pulled, but also residents throughout the Yonge and Eglinton community. In many ways, it's kind of one of our many quasi-community centers where people just congregate and come together. It's one of those places. And to further contextualize it, when the poll went out and it was unsuccessful at the condo, Tony and I had a conversation. I said, do your due diligence and demonstrate to me, and therefore community council, that that there is more support in the area than not, and that perhaps just taking a snapshot of one condo doesn't really take into account the neighborhood will. So he did that, and he was able to demonstrate a vast amount of support throughout the community. So I'm convinced, being the one who has to, respond and be accountable to that community, that there actually is a preponderance of support for it. Let's park that for a moment. Eglinton Avenue, as you all know, has been under enormous pressure for all the right reasons. Our community supports the Eglinton Crosstown being constructed. We want better rapid transit. But a reality of construction, just like if you renovate your home, is that there's going to be a nightmare to go through while you go through it. These businesses have experienced it, and I think it's reasonable that if there are things that we can do to support the success of this business, as Councillor Cressy is working on with businesses in his area and others, that we should do what's reasonable and what's right. So I ask for your support to support the success of this business, but I also am confident that this reflects what I believe will be the preponderance of the community's position too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matlow. Any questions of the mover? Anyone else interested in speaking to the item? Okay, we have the motion before us. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Item as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. We are heading back to take one step back. TE 29.29, front yard parking appeal, 121 Browning Avenue. Councillor Fajidakis, you're ready to deal with it?
Yes, we have a motion to defer till the April meeting. This is at the request of the applicant who says he can't be here for this meeting, and he can be here in April.
Okay. All those in favor of the deferral motion? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We will now head to some leftover business. Let's start. 98.
Sorry, 89.
89. So let's start at T 29.89, endorsement of.
Sorry, so we have to withdraw two communications on this. Both of these communications must be withdrawn. These events are no longer want to be considered.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
I will take care of that.
And do they need to know that?
It would be good if you could announce it.
Okay, sure. Okay. So thank you. We are dealing with T 29.89, endorsement of events for liquor licensing purposes. Before we go ahead and address the staff report, I'd like to let members of Community Council know that there is a withdrawal of two correspondents, one from Celebrate Toronto, as well as a letter from the Distillery District, their Christmas Market 2018. So those two pieces of correspondence will be withdrawn from the record. No, Christmas has not been canceled. Please continue with all your festivity plannings for 2018. There's just a few months before it's time. All those in favor, okay, actually I'll be moving the recommendations in the report. All those in favor? Okay. Any opposed? That carries. The party continues. T 29.98, 88 Queen Street East, a public art plan. There are no members of the public here to speak to this matter. I held it largely because, well, it was a mistake. I should have let it go sooner. But I'm glad the staff did not stick around to wait for this. I would like to move the recommendations in the report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. So let's deal, did 99? No, okay. Okay, so T 29.99, installation and removal of on-street parking restrictions, Brand Street and Ward 20. Councillor Cressy, this is new business.
Yeah, I'm going to move the recs in my letter, please.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. T 29.100, 49 Spadina Avenue, request for report on Ontario Municipal Board appeal. Councillor Cressy.
I'll move the recommendations in my letter.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 29.101, 600 University Avenue parking amendments. Councillor Cressy.
This is the item that had to go to council as part of the Mount Sinai ER during construction, and I'll move the recommendations in my letter.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Is Everything complete?
Don't forget your charger.
Okay, so councillors, we have cleared all the items on the agenda, including new business. I'd like to invite Councillor Fragedakis to close us off.
Well, this is that the Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws bills 36 to 52, 54 to 67, and 69 prepared for the January 16, 2018 meeting 29 of the Community Council.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. And thank you very,
I have the confirmatory bill.
Sure. Yes, of course. Go ahead.
That the Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceeding of the Toronto and East York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 29 on January the 16th, 2018.
Okay, also very well done, Councillor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you, staff, for your support. I want to note that the time is only 3:20. I really don't know what I'm going to do with myself. This is the earliest community council meeting I think we've concluded in the 7.5 years I've been here. That's exciting.
Meanwhile,
okay.
the chair of the
Thank you.
Community Council is going to get up and say, "Oh, you guys do that."
Yeah.
Who is this?